Welcome to the Soul Touched by Dogs podcast, the show for dog lovers who see dogs not as toys or tools, but wise souls worth our respect and care. I'm Anke Herman, and I'm your host. I talk to awesome humans, people who do great work for dogs and their people. So come and join us for today's conversation. Hello and welcome, Dr. Laura Donaldson. I'm super excited to have you with me.
I'm delighted to be here. And, I love any opportunity to talk about becoming trauma informed and what trauma is. And, I think you've had such great podcasts, Anka, so I'm thrilled to be here.
And I think it's such an important topic. And the more I hear about it, the more I think, when I got my first dog, it's like, oh boy, I wish I'd known then, what
Yeah.
I'm learning now. So, and if there's anybody, anybody who's listening, is like, that's for you, so it's bringing that awareness and that knowledge that still doesn't seem to be the default. But before we dig in all the way, let people know where you're based and, what's your business with dogs.
Well, I live in upstate New York, and we're in the middle of snow, ice, below zero wind chill. Um, I live on Lake Cayuga. It's one of the Finger Lakes. We're about 250 miles upstate from New York City and not that far from the Canadian border. And Ithaca is my city, and I taught at Cornell for a number of years, Cornell University, and I live about 5 minutes from there. So I've turned into a farmer in my retirement. I'm retired from Cornell now. And I have sheep. I used to have chickens. Of course, I have dogs. I'm down to two. I've lived with as many as six in our little tiny 1829 farmhouse. And my African gray parrot, Obi, who most people hear because he loves to chime in anytime I'm online. So if you hear whistling or somebody calling out Laura, that's him.
Oh, that is funny. But he doesn't swear, does he?
No, he doesn't swear.
Yes, it just makes me laugh because there is this I saw like in a YouTube video, there's a bunch of like five or
Yeah.
six African parrots in the British Zoo, and they swear like truck drivers, and they will insult the visitors and
And
stuff. So they're
they're
putting
the
them
most
somewhere.
popular attraction. People are flocking to come see them and be sworn at by the parents.
Somebody in a Facebook group, somebody says, "Oh well, I'm surprised that that positive reinforcement training should really work there to teach." I'm like, "Oh, I think they're getting plenty of
Yeah,
positive
they
reinforcement."
are. Yes, yes, yes. I love parrots, but they're not for everybody, let me just say.
So now let's unpack what you mean when you say trauma aware in the context of dogs. So, how can I become trauma aware with my dog, for my dog?
Well, by listening to podcasts like this, that's one. But so I want to maybe back up a step. And I love this quote by Gabor Mate, who's one of my favorite thinkers, The Myth of Normal. If you want to have something to read by him. But he says trauma is a foundational layer of experience in modern life, but it's one that's largely ignored or misapprehended. Meaning, a lot of times we see it, but we think it's something else. I think there's two ways that can come out. If you have a child, for example, who's struggling with trauma, that may come out as aggressive behavior in a elementary school class. So if you get called, if your kid is hitting other people in the lunch line, um, that's liable to be slapped with one of two things, either a toxic label, he's just bad, or she is just bad, naughty, unlovable, or it's clinically diagnosed as oppositional disorder. And there may be some of that in there, but what is missing is the even more fundamental underlying layer of trauma, because aggression is a very common response to trauma, not just in humans, but dogs.
That makes a lot of sense. So
And
that means if somebody comes to you with an aggressive dog, your first direction, the first direction you look in is like, okay, what's the underlying trauma here? Is
yes,
that correct?
yes, absolutely. Because I do think the history is important. And what you'll often find out is, and people don't connect these dots, right? Well, let's see. 6 months ago, my dog was attacked by an off-leash dog when we were just walking down the sidewalk, or my dog was really terrified by a skateboarder, or there's what I call microtrauma in the home. Maybe you have young kids who are violating the dog's spatial boundaries on a daily basis, pulling their ears, yelling, moving fast. And for many dogs, that is very hard to deal with and threatening. And then they remarked on how the dog's behavior kind of deteriorated over the last 6 months. And I connect the dots, and they go, oh, um, it helps them to understand their dog's behavior.
Yeah.
That actually, I think I've never met a dog struggling with aggression who didn't have some kind of trauma in their profile or background. And that can be veterinary, it can be a young puppy who has a series of surgeries and injuries. And for a lot of their puppyhood, they're confined. That can be very traumatic.
That
It,
makes a lot of sense because literally, like in last week's newsletter, I wrote about little Leo. He
yeah,
got bitten when he was 11 months old, and it literally destroyed his world.
yeah,
Right? It didn't destroy his world. It destroyed his trust in the world.
yes,
And like he was this, you know, ta-ta, I'm cute, and you know it. Like this is how he went through the world. And then this dog came along and just went for him. And he wasn't really, the vet said, oh, he's ready for Hollywood. What an actor,
mm-hmm,
because he was hysterical.
mm-hmm,
And the vet says, oh yeah, he just had this little, like if that dog he really had wanted to hurt him, he wouldn't
mm-hmm,
be here kind of thing, right? So like physically, he didn't have much of an injury, but the shock of it all,
the
and then
emotional,
yeah, and then he had his cone, which he loved, and I always
mm-hmm,
got the sense like, oh, he feels safe with that thing, right?
mm-hmm,
And he started being reactive against other dogs afterwards,
yeah,
and funny enough, funny enough, male dogs, big male dogs in confined spaces. He was fine
mm-hmm,
on the beach, right? So you
mm-hmm,
could really, it was easy, but that's, see, the thing is, it's easy to trace that back because it
yeah,
was literally instant. The shock at the vet, where he was obviously also frightened, because they said, oh, well, no, we had to sedate him. We couldn't even
yeah,
like examine him. So it's really clear. Now, what are some things that can traumatize a dog that may not be as obvious to see?
Well, I think there are many. I talk about I've written this series of articles on canine trauma for Happy Healthy Dog. And we can post the links
Yes, please.
to some
Yes,
of them
please.
because the very first one was called "Is Your Dog Experiencing Microtrauma?"
Mm.
Right? And microtrauma is often hidden in plain sight. It's daily. It's not like the macro trauma of being attacked by an off-leash dog or being in an accident or being in a natural disaster like a fire, right? This is it often has to do with the interaction between dogs and young children. It can be the presence of other dogs in the building, in the neighborhood. Let's say you live in a more urban area and you have to take an elevator to go anywhere. Elevators can be quite scary for dogs, and I think it's not just the confinement, it's the noises, it's the movement, and it's also there's no escape route. So if you're in there with another dog who doesn't have good intentions, I've worked with dogs who were attacked in an elevator,
Oh.
and that was quite traumatizing. But micro trauma, it could be even noises,
Hmm.
hidden noises that we can't hear, that your refrigerator is giving out. Eileen Anderson has some wonderful um, articles on sonic, the sonic overload that's often happening to our dogs that we can't hear. Um, so it can just be anything, because here's the bottom line. Trauma is our response to an experience. It's not in the inherent qualities of the experience itself. So, one dog could be attacked in an elevator and maybe be stressed out and need some recovery time, but then they'd be fine to go in the elevator, no issues. Another dog would be attacked and you would have to, put a new set of stairs outside your window. That's how bad the resistance
And
would
it's
be.
like with people, it's the same, right?
Yeah.
Some
Yes,
people,
exactly.
I like, how they always say, oh, the most stressful, like the 10 most stressful. Actually, during when I did coach training, we did an exercise and we were like put in a group with a list of like horrific stuff, right? And we were supposed to come to an agreement. What's the order of horrific here, right? And there was being in prison. There was being like, I don't know, broke, like being
Yeah.
paralyzed, like all these different things, right? And as you can imagine, it was impossible
Yeah.
to find an order because it wasn't like, oh, moving house is horrible, is super stressful. I'm like, moving house, bit of a pain in the butt, but not stressful, right? So other people freak out over it, right? So another one, I thought, oh my God, the shame of going into prison. Somebody else goes, oh yeah, no, I've been in prison, not that bad. It's like it's literally, it's not the
Yeah.
thing itself, you know.
Yes. It's not the experience itself, it's our response to it. And it usually is our long-term
Hmm.
response to it. I use an expansive definition of trauma from Judith Herman, who's again one of my favorite trauma thinkers, and it's anything that overwhelms our capacity to cope.
Hmm.
So this is not stress, right? And it's not even severe stress. This is something that actually causes us and our bodies to activate adaptive survival strategies that we may still be using 20 years later, right? And it's no different in dogs. This can expand over a period of years.
Yeah.
And so that in that sense, dogs and humans process trauma and respond to trauma in very closely parallel ways.
So apart from aggression, where it becomes like a problem for the owner,
Yeah.
right? So what other ways can, especially these micro traumas, like in what other ways can they show up in a dog that we might
Well,
often overlook?
there are many, and again, it parallels what happens in humans, especially children. But you can develop avoidance behavior. That's a big strategy. That's an adaptive survival mechanism. And I often talk about this has been one of my favorite themes over a period of years. There's no stubborn dogs. There's no willful dogs. They're confused, scared, traumatized dogs. And what happens is, let's say you take your dog out for a walk, right? And something really scares her. Maybe you have a dog that runs down to fence fight 3 houses down the road, or something worse. It could be anything. And the next day you want to go for a walk and she says, no, thank you. She's balking at the front door. I'm not going out. So one thing I want to stress is that this is a communication. It is not willfulness. It's not being stubborn. And so we need to listen to our dogs, take their communication seriously. That is a communication of stress. Or dogs who just plop down on the sidewalk in the middle of a walk. Why are they doing that? That is the first question to ask. Are you in pain? Are you scared? Usually it's because outside has become too dangerous for them. And so, one of my huge themes, and if you do any of my trauma webinars and courses, you'll hear me talk about this all the time, is we have to start with a foundation always, always, always of deep safety. Deep safety. Why does a dog not want to go out of the house? Because she's not feeling safe. And so the usual behaviorist response, and I would say, some people have done things like take a water bottle and spray the dog in the face with water, right? Or you get a shock collar and you zap them. I mean, those are just, don't even, let's
No.
not even go down that road. That's very cruel. But I think even doing something like, okay, you don't want to go out of the house. I'm going to get your favorite treat and I'm going to lure you out and I'm going to keep. Is that really, that is, I would say that's putting way too much pressure on the dog before we even understand what's going on.
And it breaks trust as well.
Breaks trust, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because listening to and hearing our dogs for who they really are is one of the most healing things we can do. And that's where we always have to start.
So what would you suggest? Let's just play out that scenario. So maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody hasn't even, the dog got scared, but like like it's, look, I'm living in Spain, so you see a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
People might be chatting, so the owners might not have even seen what happened, right? And
Exactly.
so now the dogs, they're like, I'm not going out, right? So we're not forcing him. I've seen a dog trainer, a local dog trainer, adopt a Mali who was like super scared. And then he goes, look, I'll fix them. And he totally flooded him. You know, he was scared of people. He took him into some like manifestation with like people to, the
Yeah.
dog literally froze. The dog would not move at all. And he goes, look how obedient he is, right? Cruel to the nth degree in my books. But so we also don't want to manipulate them and like lure them to do something they don't want to do. Okay, what do I do to support my
Well,
dog and to help them,
yeah.
get over this?
Let me just say, obedience has nothing to do with healing from trauma.
Hmm.
Suppression, in fact, I did a whole Facebook post on this, and I talk about it in all my courses. Suppression of behavior does not equal healing from trauma. Compliance is not cooperation.
I love that. Oh, love
And
that.
yeah, and it doesn't mean that our dog really has a good state of emotional well-being, even if they are sitting or lying down in the presence of concerning triggers. And I'm always concerned with the emotional well-being first and foremost. So I would do, so let me just give you an example. And this is one, if people are interested, the next place to go for, a deeper dive would be my webinar called Why Becoming Trauma Informed Will Change Everything You Do with Dogs. It's on Thinkific. We can put the link in. It's
Yes, we
almost
will.
free. And so one of the examples I used was a 9-month-old lab mix who refused to be or was very difficult to house train. Right at 9 months, he was still pooping inside the house. Uh, and he had a lot of other severe fear, anxiety, stress issues. And what the dog's human had not done was connect the dots. Right? Why at 9 months was he still not house trained? Because it definitely was not a physical, like bladder, GI issue. No, it was a trauma issue. For this dog, going outside was too dangerous. And so he might go out and pee and then run back in. But pooping requires the dog to make themselves a lot more vulnerable because it takes longer. They have to either squat or change positions, right? And so what we actually did was we worked on the deep safety aspect of it, and we were doing this for his whole life with this family, but particularly for house training, we had to find a way to help him feel safe going outside. So we put a tent up right off the porch, right, that had sides and an entrance so he could go out on the grass, but he was protected. He actually ended up choosing his own little safe haven outside, but erecting that tent, that safe space, was a way to acknowledge, okay, you're not just being difficult.
Mhm.
You're not just being naughty. You're not just untrainable. This is really a deep-seated somatic as well as cognitive issue. And that was the beginning of him actually being able to go outside with no issue.
Yeah. That
And
makes so much sense though, because I'm just like thinking, if you imagine, if I'm imagining, like, I don't know, when I lived in Granada, there was a time when, you couldn't hardly go out of the house without somebody kind of trying to grab your bag, right? And
Yeah.
so you get kind of scared, so when you're sort of scared to go out at night, whatever,
Yeah.
and so I do remember that sensation, right? When you kind of don't feel safe and you feel
Yeah.
vulnerable. And so just the thought of somebody then treating me as if I'm stubborn or
Mm-hmm.
as if I just don't want to do the thing, or if I'm just being difficult, so it's not just that you deal with the thing, then you on top of it deal with that being misunderstood and judged unfairly, basically. So that's pretty much what we're doing to dogs if we don't start to recognize what's actually going on.
Yes. And we know trauma lives in the body, right?
Yeah.
First, foremost, most deeply, it's somatic. The body keeps the score, which is the name of a very famous book by Bessel van der Kolk, a trauma, a leader in the world of trauma. And so becoming trauma informed, um, I just think in the article I did for Happy Healthy Dog, um, I talk about 5 basic realities of being trauma informed. First and always is safety, ensuring that feeling, that visceral sense of deep safety. So if my dog is balking going out the front door on a walk, I have to assume she's doing the best she can with the strategies that are available to her, one of which is avoidance behavior. And she is actually able to express some agency. No, I don't want to go out there. It's too scary for me right now. Um, so instead of doing the way too often monologue, I talk, you listen. We're going on a walk, by God. I don't care what you feel. I would say you need to leave your dog at home and take the walk on your own. You know, but safety first. What can I do to help you feel safe? And maybe that means we only have exercise in the backyard for a while until I can get a better sense of what is happening, right? Second is trustworthiness, which we've talked about, and that means not tricking my dog by laying a trail of treats and saying for them, well, you're just mistaken, outside is safe. Well, no, maybe not for the dog, right? Um, Prioritizing choice, because we know with trauma, agency is taken away. So, and not just by whatever happened to us. Like, I didn't ask for that dog to attack me. I didn't ask to be assaulted. The list goes on, but it's also, um, we can't heal according to other people's schedule
Agenda
for
and
us.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Healing only comes from within. And that's what a lot of people lose sight of. By God, you're going to heal because we have to go to our family vacation in a month. So whatever your issues are, you need to be over them. But I hear this a lot from clients, right?
Yeah. And I guess it would be
Um,
worse with dogs, you
yeah,
wouldn't say that to your child, but it's almost like the dog's expected to fit into our
yeah,
life, so
yeah,
who would go is like, oh, we'll just reschedule the holiday, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then collaboration. This is a huge one, right? And the way I define collaboration is as interspecies cooperation. This is a mutual relationship. You're my partner.
Yeah.
And with a partner, we both have responsibilities, we both gain deep benefits, but the hallmark of a partnership is communication and me listening to you.
Yeah.
And
It's that
changing what I
respect, right?
do, right? I change what I do based what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
And part of that is also taking a step back to trustworthiness, believing that our dogs are doing the best they can with the adaptive survival strategies they have at their disposal. It doesn't mean we won't work with them to help them find more adaptive, more appropriate, more functional. But yeah, and then empowerment. And I used to hate that word, right? Because it can be blaming the victim. If you're not empowered, then you must be doing something wrong. Right? But for dog, I've reclaimed it, right? And this is how I've redefined it through my work with dogs, and that's by helping dogs learn the coping skills, the coping strategies they need to heal whatever they need. And I've got to take my clues from them. I can't come in and say, okay, here's A, B, C, D, you need to heal. No, it's different for every dog. And then they have like a toolbox or a repertoire of independent coping skills, even things like grounding, deep breathing, trauma-informed movement that they can use on their own independently. That's what I call empowerment.
Yeah, knowing how to deal. And I think that not being kind of not overlooked, but like not being ignored and not being, oh yeah, you just be. I'm just like this really sits with me when I'm thinking, okay, when I'm scared and somebody says, oh, just don't be an idiot. Hang on, we've got to go, like, just get over it. Like, it's cruel, it's inconsiderate, it's unkind, so it's just like you would not want to, like, you would certainly not trust that person because you think like, well, they don't have my best interest at heart because they don't even
And they
stop
don't
long enough to
understand what I'm
like,
feeling.
exactly, and they don't even make an effort,
Yeah.
right? And I'm thinking we really owe it to our dogs to look at them as, yes, another species, but somebody who deserves enough respect to sort of think about, like, hang on, what, like, how does it feel for you? What does this whole situation look like through your eyes and not what I'd like to have because, I want to go to the barbecue on Saturday, right?
Yeah. And I love your example of, it's the basic, just get over it. Life is easier for me if you get over it. Right?
I mean, the thing is, and that's why I just love that conversation because I do, like, I have to admit, like Leo got bitten like 20 years ago, and I didn't know then he was my first dog. Didn't have a clue. And, and I was living in a house where we had to go out for him to pee if I didn't want him to pee in the house, right? But to be honest, like after like this whole situation and the whole shuffle, and then he was scared and to the vet, and the vet goes, he's an actor, like he's ready for Hollywood, he just kind of like, he's a drama queen. And I took him, like, now I'm like, oh my God, like it makes me sort of 20 years later, makes me kind of like shrink back in embarrassment, because the day, like, after, when he sort of recovered, it's like, okay, let's go for a walk, because that's what I thought I needed. And that's what I thought, like, he needs to go out and pee. Everybody always tells you you need to go out for walks. Now I'm thinking I would have left that dog inside, for enough time for him to just even process what happened. But it wasn't that I thought like, oh, stuff, Leo, I don't give a I love that dog to bits. I just didn't know. It never even occurred to me that not, I mean, and he didn't sort of not want to go. I didn't have to pull him out because he probably didn't know anything different either. But it's like, I'm now looking like, oh, but that was probably not the best thing to do, but I literally, it didn't even occur to me that something else would be available, or the much, much better way of, rather than, okay, let's just go back to normal, right? And then deal with you getting kind of scared at other dogs.
Well, and I think the example of the vet, you cannot assume that even our veterinary professionals are trauma informed. They're not. And I gave a webinar on exactly that topic to the national group of veterinary behaviorists from Switzerland. And I was thrilled to do that because it shows there's a growing interest in and recognition of the need for this in the veterinary community, because that response from your vet, that is equivalent to malpractice. It really is. But I think it's one that a lot of people, it's not just that trauma is ignored as a foundational layer, so people don't even know about it. But you have to remember, it hasn't been that long that we've recognized dogs as sentient, emotional, cognitive beings. And of all the kind of higher mammal species, it's actually, we now know because the research is ongoing and accumulating, dogs and humans have uncannily similar social and emotional brains. It doesn't mean dogs think like humans because they don't use verbal language, but they have sophisticated communication. They process experience and information from the environment in very similar ways. And because of that, they have very similar behavior issues. And so that's why I start almost all my webinars with the dogs and humans are uncannily similar. And if you really took that seriously, you would never make a response by saying, oh, they're just acting, or this is not important, or just get over it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense to think, well, yeah, I mean, and also like looking at it, it helps you know what's right, because there's so much stuff that you wouldn't do or wouldn't say if you thought like, okay, if that was me, frightened of something, would I appreciate somebody say, oh, don't be stubborn now, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, no, I probably wouldn't trust you again,
Yeah.
if I
And I
know that
think
I
that's
can't trust you to even bother to try and understand me.
a great rule of thumb, what you just, how would I feel if someone did that to me? Don't do it to your dog.
Well,
You know,
that's a pretty cool ground rule, right? So I think,
yes.
if somebody stopped for long enough to even think that, I think
Yeah.
we'd get a lot better reaction. So if somebody wanted to really dig into that, so obviously we're going to pop the links to
Yeah.
the articles and to the Thinkific course. Where's the best place to get in touch with you and find out more about your work?
Well, you can go to my website. I have a contact form. It's 4paws4directions.com, really easily remembered. Um, I get to know most people through my courses and webinars, and they're all on Thinkific. The one I would recommend starting with is the trauma informed one. Why becoming trauma informed will change everything you do with dogs. And then I have others. I have one on trauma and aggression. I have a new one coming out in May called Befriending Difficult Behaviors. And befriending is kind of my new rubric that incorporates a lot of the work I've done on trauma, aggression, fear, anxiety, stress, the whole 9 yards. And then you'll get, you people have to kind of make their own path, right? Anyone who knows me knows I'm blueprint aversive. Um, so are you okay?
I had a bit of a cough attack.
Yes. I'll keep talking. um and so what I would want people to take away are some underlying principles, guidelines like the safety, trustworthiness, choice, collaboration, empowerment, deep safety, but how you actually build that into your life with your dogs or client dogs, that is yet to be discovered, right?
Yeah.
So that's why a good working knowledge is so important.
Yeah.
Because there's no blueprint for this.
Yeah. This
Uh,
is really it's kind of trailblazing in a sense, right?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll put the link, I'll send Anka the links for the one course, and then you can go to my website, email me. That contact form comes right to my inbox. You can always direct message me too if you're on Facebook. So all of those are ways to get in touch.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. You already know that I'm gonna be on your case in May to get you back when you have the new webinar. So definitely want you back for that as well
Yes,
to
I'd
share
love to.
about it and tell us all about it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for today, and I'll hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you for having me. Take good care.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so other dog lovers can find the show. If you haven't already, head over to soultouchedbydogs.com and sign up for weekly doggy cuteness, tips, recommendations, and personal stories to warm your dog-loving heart. And if you know a awesome human you think I should interview, I'd love an introduction. Email me at Anke, that's ANKE, @soultouchedbydogs.com.